Have you ever found yourself sitting in a waiting room, or maybe you're like scrolling through an online directory?
Oh, we've all been there.
Right, and you finally find a new doctor or, I don't know, a physical therapist who looks absolutely perfect for your needs.
You ready to book?
Exactly. You call their office, you're ready to book the appointment, and the receptionist gives you that dreaded response.
We'd love to see you, but we aren't accepting your insurance yet.
Yeah, check back in a few months. And have you ever wondered why it takes so incredibly long for a fully trained, highly qualified medical professional to just start accepting your health insurance?
That's a great question.
Because I think most of us naturally assume it has something to do with uh, assessing their medical skills.
Right, like a quality control thing.
Yeah, we picture some grand medical board rigorously evaluating their surgical techniques or reviewing their patient outcomes, but the reality is entirely different.
Completely different.
The answer isn't a lack of clinical skill at all. It is a massive, completely hidden bureaucratic wall.
A wall that completely dictates the financial survival of medical practices across the country.
Oh, absolutely.
And yet it remains almost entirely invisible to you, the patient, who's just sitting in that waiting room. It's a structural bottleneck that quietly chokes the whole healthcare supply chain.
And that invisible wall is our entire focus today. For this deep dive, we are pulling from a fascinating piece of industry insight. It's an article from January 2026, written by an author named Oliver.
No, it's a great piece.
It really is. It was published in Credentialing News by an organization called Prime Credential, and the title alone sets the stage perfectly. It's called How Missing Documents Slow Down Payer Enrollment.
Very to the point.
Yeah, so our mission today is to explore these hidden operational bottlenecks in the healthcare system.
We're getting into the weeds.
We really are. We are going to reveal how something as tiny, as seemingly insignificant as a single missing signature or like a blank date field can completely freeze a medical practice's revenue for months at a time.
It's
So, okay, let's unpack this because on the surface, reading about administrative paperwork sounds a bit dry.
Sure.
But when you look at the mechanics of how this system actually operates, it turns into this high-stakes operational thriller.
A thriller where the villain is an incorrectly formatted W-9 form.
Exactly. But to really understand why these administrative missteps are so devastating, we have to look at the fundamental architecture of how a provider actually gets paid.
Right, because anyone working in clinic management knows there are two distinct hurdles a provider faces before they can see a patient and bill for it.
Right.
But outside the industry, people constantly conflate them. We have credentialing, and then we have payer enrollment.
Right. And since our listeners already know their way around the healthcare space, we don't need a textbook definition here.
No, of course not.
But we do need to highlight the friction between these two concepts. So credentialing is essentially the clinical background check.
Read the board certifications.
Yeah, the medical school transcripts, the state licenses. It's the process that proves a doctor is legally allowed to practice medicine and, won't harm a patient.
It is the verification of clinical legitimacy. Basically, it answers the fundamental question of safety.
But then we hit the second hurdle, which is payer enrollment. And this is the process of registering that clinically verified provider with a specific insurance company.
Or a government plan like Medicare.
Right, so they can actually enter the billing system and get paid.
Right.
Now, I have to push back on this dual structure right out of the gate.
Okay, let's hear it.
If a provider has already passed the rigorous, exhausting background check of credentialing, if the state medical board has already verified their education and their licenses, why on earth is payer enrollment treated as a totally separate, arduous, months-long process?
That's a fair question.
It feels like passing a grueling driving test to prove, how to operate a vehicle, but then having to wait 3 separate months for the DMV to manually type your name into a completely different computer system before you're legally allowed to turn the key.
What's fascinating here is how the modern healthcare system fundamentally separates clinical competence from commerce.
How do you mean?
Well, they operate on entirely different logical frameworks. Credentialing is the language of patient safety,
Right.
but payer enrollment is the language of financial risk, tax liability, and billing infrastructure.
Oh, I see.
The insurance company doesn't just need to know you are a safe surgeon. They need to know exactly how your specific clinic entity is structured for tax purposes.
Because they're the ones writing the checks.
Exactly. They need to map your national provider identifier to their proprietary payment matrix. They need to verify that your electronic funds transfer routing numbers align with their specific corporate payout protocols.
Wow, okay.
So being safe to operate on a human body does not mean your banking details and practice locations are formatted correctly for an automated multi-billion-dollar payment system.
So credentialing checks your clinical safety, but enrollment actually turns on the money faucet.
That's a great way to put it.
That makes sense conceptually. But if enrollment is the ultimate gateway to revenue, we have to examine what happens when that gateway gets jammed.
And it gets jammed a lot.
The numbers Oliver presents in this piece are genuinely staggering. Let's look at the actual failure points within this financial infrastructure,
Yeah.
specifically the cost of a single missing document.
Yeah, the statistics from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, really pull back the curtain on this.
What are we talking about here?
Well, we aren't talking about a few applications slipping through the cracks. CMS reports that a massive 30 to 35% of Medicare applications are delayed.
Over a third.
Over a third.
And here's the kicker. If an application is submitted incomplete, it adds an agonizing 30 to 45 days to the processing time. And when they say incomplete, they do not mean the doctor forgot to prove they went to medical school.
No.
A single missing administrative item triggers a total hold. The piece lists things like a W-9 for tax IDs, an electronic funds transfer or EFT authorization form.
Or an unattached voided check.
Right, even leaving a single page unsigned. Or missing the graduation dates on a university transcript.
If any of those are missing, the entire process stops dead.
It's crazy.
It is an environment of absolute zero tolerance. There is no partial credit. You either submit a flawless packet or you are treated as if you submitted nothing at all.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I'm looking at the zero tolerance policy, and it reminds me of a very rigid, 1990s computer algorithm.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
You know when you're filling out an old web form, and if one single field is blank, you hit submit, and it just returns a syntax error and crashes the whole program.
And it deletes everything you just typed.
Exactly. It deletes it all. It feels exactly like that. Rather than a human being at the insurance company picking up the phone and calling the doctor's office to say, hey, your malpractice insurance looks great, but you forgot to sign page 4. Can you fax that over?
Right.
They just hit the brakes and slap a 45-day penalty on you. Why does it function like a syntax error instead of a human conversation?
The reason it behaves exactly like a syntax error is because at the initial intake level, you aren't dealing with a human analyst who has the critical thinking skills to make that phone call.
Oh, it's automated.
Partially. When a massive packet of documents hits a commercial payer, or CMS, it goes into an ingestion queue. It is often being processed by optical character recognition software.
Right, OCR.
Exactly. Or by entry-level data clerks, whose sole function is a binary checklist. Is there ink in box 42? Yes or no?
Wow. Just a yes or no.
If the answer is no, the file fails the primary validation script. It is immediately kicked out of the active queue and into an exception pile.
And it just sits there.
It sits there until the system generates an automated deficiency letter. That letter gets mailed out.
Snail mail.
Often, yes. The clinic receives it days later, fixes the missing signature, and sends it back. But it doesn't go back to the person who is reviewing it.
Oh no, don't tell me.
It goes straight back to the bottom of the 30-day ingestion queue.
That is brutal.
That is the anatomy of the 45-day delay. It's not malice. It's industrial-scale processing rigidity.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, that industrial rigidity forces medical providers to become flawless administrators just to survive.
They don't really have a choice.
Because the financial gravity here is immense. I mean, every week a provider can't bill due to one of these paperwork loops cuts deeply into their operating revenue.
Absolutely.
Clinic managers are paying rent, they are paying staff salaries, they are buying medical supplies, but the revenue stream is completely frozen because someone forgot to attach a voided check.
It shifts the entire burden of perfection onto the provider's shoulders.
And that burden of perfection brings us directly into the timeline trap.
Ooh, the timeline trap is rough.
Because if a single syntax error can cause a 45-day loop, the baseline time it takes to navigate the system is already terrifying, even if you do everything right.
Exactly. Even perfectly completed forms take forever.
Right. If a single missing NA crashes the system, how long does it actually take to get back on track? Because 45 days sounds bad, but when we look at commercial insurers, they are entirely different beasts compared to government plans.
Yeah, the timelines providers are subjected to vary wildly. The contrast is one of the most frustrating aspects for clinic directors.
I can imagine.
With Medicare and Medicaid, enrollment generally takes about 30 to 90 days, assuming the application is perfectly complete.
Okay, 30 to 90 days.
But commercial insurers operate on a much longer horizon.
Significantly longer. I'm seeing 3 to 6 months for commercial payer enrollment.
Yeah.
Half a year. I have to challenge this.
Go for it.
Why does a commercial insurer take up to half a year to process this, compared to Medicare's 30 to 90 days? I mean, 6 months seems absurd for what essentially boils down to data entry and verification.
It does seem absurd.
Is this just standard bureaucratic bloat, or is there like an active structural disincentive for commercial insurers to speed up a process that eventually requires them to start paying out money for claims?
This raises an important question about systemic efficiency
Yeah.
and really the underlying architecture of commercial insurance.
Okay.
While it's easy to assume they are just dragging their feet to hold on to capital, and believe me, many frustrated providers would argue exactly that, we have to look at the internal mechanisms of how commercial payers build their networks.
It's more complicated than just verifying an ID.
Much more. They aren't just verifying a license, they were building a highly specific geographic risk profile.
Risk profile.
Yeah, when a commercial insurer takes an application, they are mapping that provider against regional network adequacy standards. They're linking them to specific tiered fee schedules.
Oh, I see.
They're verifying malpractice limits against specific corporate risk thresholds that vary by state and specialty.
So it's a massive matrix.
Exactly. Furthermore, commercial networks are often fragmented into dozens of subnetworks.
Like HMOs and PPOs.
Exactly. HMOs, PPOs, specialized behavioral health networks, and the provider has to be vetted and coded for each specific matrix. The sheer logistical complexity of building that profile creates an inherent massive bottleneck.
So it's less about someone slowly reading a transcript and more about integrating this new doctor into a massively complex, multi-tiered financial ecosystem.
That's exactly it.
But that 6-month window creates a glaring operational nightmare.
Oh, the expiration trap.
Yeah, what happens if a required document expires while it is just sitting in this half-year queue?
That is a daily source of anxiety for administrative staff. Because we are talking about documents with hard, non-negotiable expiration dates.
Like state medical licenses.
State medical licenses, DEA certifications, malpractice insurance policies. These aren't static documents like a medical degree.
Right. A medical degree is forever, but a DEA license has an end date.
Exactly.
And if your DEA license expires on day 150 of a 180-day wait, you are suddenly out of compliance.
Instantly.
So providers have to proactively track these dates and submit the updated, renewed versions promptly to the insurer before the reviewer even notices it's expired.
Which is a whole separate job in itself.
Right.
Right.
Thankfully, the source material notes that most payers will allow the revised document to be swapped into the active file without forcing the provider to restart the entire application from scratch.
That is one small mercy.
Yeah, but the anxiety of babysitting that file for 6 months, anticipating what might expire while the insurer is taking their time, sounds exhausting.
It requires a level of hypervigilance that pulls resources directly away from patient care.
Because they're focusing on paperwork.
You can't just submit the binder and walk away. You are actively managing a moving target for half a year.
So since the payers clearly aren't lowering their standard,
No, they aren't.
and their internal risk profiling means they certainly aren't speeding up their timelines,
Definitely not.
how are clinics actually fighting back? If the burden falls entirely on the provider, what are the survival tactics?
Let's move into the solutions and workarounds. How do you organize this level of chaos?
To survive this, clinic managers are essentially fighting a two-front war: aggressive manual organization and technological integration.
Okay, let's look at the manual front first, which is really an exercise in defensive administration.
Defensive administration is the perfect term for it.
It really is. The strategies outlined are basically a masterclass in bureaucratic self-defense. Clinics are keeping centralized folders for each provider, maintaining strict internal checklists, and engaging in the vital practice of signing and dating absolutely every single page.
Every single page.
And here's my favorite detail. If a field on an application doesn't apply to you, you explicitly write NA for not applicable.
Right.
You never, ever leave it blank.
Because a blank field is a syntax error to the ingestion software. So what does this all mean? To me, I'm marveling at the idea that literally writing the letters NA acts as a magical ward against bureaucratic rejection.
It basically does.
It's like a spell of protection. You write NA, and the 45-day delay monster passes over your application.
Yeah, pretty much.
It proves exactly what we were saying earlier. It's entirely about syntax, not logic. The system just needs proof that a human consciously acknowledged the box rather than accidentally skipping it.
Yes, and the psychological toll of that on administrative staff is immense.
I can imagine.
You have highly trained clinic managers spending hours scanning documents for a single empty box. Manual checklists are incredibly prone to human fatigue and error.
Because we're human.
Exactly, which is why the industry is heavily pivoting toward the second front, which is technology.
The tech solutions are fascinating. Clinics are deploying specialized credentialing software specifically designed to track those terrifying expiration dates we talked about.
Sending automated alerts weeks before a malpractice policy lapses.
Right. But the biggest shift seems to be the adoption of centralized platforms, specifically CAQH ProView.
CAQH ProView fundamentally changes the architecture of how this data is shared.
It sounds like it. It's essentially an online portal where providers can store all of their verified credentials centrally.
Yes.
The idea is that instead of a clinic mailing 50 different binders to 50 different commercial insurers, the insurers can just tap into this central hub to pull the documents they need.
It's so much more efficient.
I immediately compare this to a digital passport for healthcare workers, or like a TSA pre-check system for medical billing.
That's exactly what it is.
It's a single source of truth, actively trying to replace hundreds of scattered, dusty file cabinets.
And by centralizing that data, you drastically reduce the surface area for human error.
Because you're only updating it once?
Exactly. If the CAQH profile is complete, the risk of a missing signature or an overlooked graduation date plummets. But maintaining that digital passport still requires dedicated effort. Which brings us to the specific angle of Prime Credential, the organization behind this piece.
Right.
They offer specialized services tailored directly to therapy practices, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech-language pathology.
Why therapy practices specifically? Is there something unique about PT, OT, and SLP clinics that makes them more vulnerable to this paperwork trap?
Absolutely. Therapy practices operate on a unique model compared to, say, a specialized surgical center.
Oh.
They rely heavily on high-volume recurring patient visits. A patient doesn't just see a physical therapist once. They might have an initial evaluation followed by 12 recurring sessions.
Oh, I see.
If a new physical therapist joins a practice and their payer enrollment is delayed by 3 months due to a missing EFT form, the clinic can't just ask the patient to wait 3 months to start their rehab.
No, of course not. The patient needs care now.
Right. And most patients can't afford to pay out of pocket for 12 sessions while waiting for the insurance to kick in.
That adds up fast.
The revenue loss for a therapy practice compounds exponentially with every single day of delay. Furthermore, therapy clinics often see a higher turnover or expansion of staff as they scale, meaning they are constantly running this enrollment gauntlet.
That makes total sense. Prime Credential steps in to proactively collect, verify, and track all these documents, handling the renewals and managing those CAQH profiles so the applications are flawless before they ever hit the insurer's ingestion queue.
It's all about proactive management.
It really highlights how standard operating procedures are the lifeblood of modern medicine. In the exam room, saving a patient requires life or death clinical precision.
Right.
But in the back office, saving and tracking a W-9 requires almost that exact same level of operational precision, because without the revenue, the clinic closes, the lights go off, and the patients lose their care entirely.
It is a fragile ecosystem. The clinical side and the financial side are inextricably linked, even if they speak completely different languages.
It all comes full circle to that waiting room. The clinic can't see you because they are trapped in a 6-month loop, waiting for an insurer's risk profiling matrix to verify an EFT form and check for NA in a blank box.
It is wild when you think about it.
It really is. So let's wrap up this deep dive. We've taken a journey through a world that, on paper, sounds like the most boring administrative task imaginable.
But it's actually incredibly high stakes.
We've seen that payer enrollment is a game of survival for healthcare providers. We started with the crucial disconnect between proving you're a safe doctor credentialing and proving you can exist in a complex financial matrix enrollment.
Right.
We looked at the devastating cost of a single missing W-9 and how industrial-scale ingestion queues turn a tiny omission into an automated 45-day penalty.
The syntax.
The syntax error, exactly. We explored the massive timeline disparities between Medicare's 30-day windows and commercial insurers taking up to half a year to build their risk profiles, creating that terrifying trap where licenses expire while waiting in line.
The expiration trap.
And finally, we looked at how clinics are fighting back with defensive administration, digital passports like CAQH, and specialized services to protect their cash flow. It really shows how a single missing date on a diploma can literally freeze a therapy practice's ability to heal people.
It's a system held together by relentless, aggressive organization. And looking at how heavily we are relying on technology like digital passports to solve this, it leaves me with a really compelling thought about where this goes next.
Oh, what's that?
We talked about how rigid syntax algorithms cause these 45-day delays today. But as artificial intelligence becomes deeply integrated into healthcare administration, how will it change this battlefield?
That's a great question.
Will AI be used by providers to instantly audit their applications and automatically fill in missing NA boxes, finally leveling the playing field?
That would be amazing.
But on the flip side, will commercial insurers deploy AI to process their ingestion queues at lightning speed, turning what used to be a 45-day delay into an instant, automated millisecond denial for the slightest formatting error?
Oh, wow.
Will AI be the tool that breaks down this invisible wall, or the tool that makes it impenetrable?
That is a brilliant and honestly slightly terrifying thought to leave on. The digital passport versus the automated denial engine. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden machinery of healthcare. We hope next time you're in a waiting room, you have a whole new appreciation for the invisible wall that clinic had to climb just to open their doors to you.